G'day. Hello. Welcome along. Hopefully this is going live. It tells me it is. But I'm not in the production booth watching it. So, you kind of think, is it live? Am I talking to no one? No. I've got a special guest ready to go shortly. We'll get underway in the episode in around about 30 seconds time. If you are watching along live, please feel free to just drop a quick comment in the chat so we know that someone's there. That would be awesome. And any comments you make, obviously, in this episode today, we can put on screen as well. So if you don't want something written on screen, just clearly label it not for the screen or something like that, so we know. So we're live on YouTube at the moment, and we are also live through StreamYard. If you haven't used StreamYard, by the way, it's fantastic. I love it. I'm just going to take a sip of my tea because my voice is so croaky. And if you are watching this feed live, a reminder, it's like you're sitting in the studio with me. It's like a live feed. And I'm interviewing you and you don't have headphones on. So you don't hear some of the production pieces. You can watch those back in the other video or listen to the pod when I edit it and release it in about an hour or so's time. All right. Well, I think we're nearly ready to go. I can see more people are joining. So that's how I know we are actually live, which is a good sign. I'm just going to get myself set up on the last couple of minutes. I've got my little timer here. I don't know if you can see that, 15 minutes. Thank you. Cool. And that just helps me keep to time. I'm not watching it all the time religiously. I don't have to time out or anything, which is lucky for me. But I think we're ready to go. Got a good conversation today about something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I've got a great guest to talk about it with. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick us off. A reminder, you might hear nothing for the start, but if you're there, you'll see us. And then I'm going to bring our guest on the screen. I better do one last one of these, I think. Do you do this too? One last of this too. There we go. I don't know what it is today. I've woken up and it's a bit croaky, but the show must go on. So here we go. Well, that's an amazing introduction. Thank you, Gavin Miller. Good to hear your voice. And you'll love today's episode, Gav, because it's all about something that you know very well, the power of AM and local radio. Dear listener, hello. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us on the live stream on YouTube, welcome. You can make comments all through the webinar/episode recording this morning. But if you're listening to this later, I'm guaranteeing you a good time as well. Today, I'm going to talk about something that doesn't really get talked about, except for the last week in Australian radio, and that is the power of AM. Now, if you're born somewhere after the year 2000 and you think AM means the morning, no, before the internet, before DAB, before FM, there was a technology that's still in use today called AM. And for the most part, AM is really powerful in lots of countries around the world. And last week, it was hit the news because there was a $56 million sale of all of the 9 networks' radio assets, so mostly AM radio stations, and they were sold to a family called the Laundy family. So we're going to get into a bit of that today. We're also going to talk about the power of local radio, and to do that, I've brought on an expert, someone who is both traversed the AM airwaves and is interested in local radio and is actually studying it in a lot of detail at the moment. Live from Brisbane, Spencer.
Wade, hello. Thanks for having me on the pod.
Pleasure. Now, you've kind of traversed the aisle between commercial and public radio in Australia, the ABC on AM. Just first of all, just give us a little shout out for AM. What do you love about talk and talk radio?
Well, I think that the two are different things, but in Australia, I know what you're getting at, that we associate talk and AM. AM's obviously just the delivery mode, isn't it? And we're going to talk, I think, in a moment about what the ABC is doing in Perth, moving its talk to FM. But for me, what I've loved about radio since I started in community radio in the 90s through the ABC and 4BC and more recently back to the ABC for a while is the connection that you create, the community that you create around the radio. And yes, you get that community around FM radio, around music radio as well, but I don't think it's as deep, that connection. I feel it's not as deep as the connection that you can achieve with talk radio.
I agree with that. And look, my first radio station was a talk station, 5AA in Adelaide, and it felt like you had 5 breakfast shows for those that only know it in the FM context, because every show, every shift was a show in itself. And that direct connection with the audience through talkback callers or just what's happening online, you kind of get that sense of actually being with the beating pulse of what the city's talking about. And just for some stats, because I thought this would be interesting to have a look at, because a lot of the conversation last week was, why has this family, the Laundy family, spent $56 million on a quote unquote bunch of AM stations? I thought what's really interesting is when you look at the actual numbers, 3AW has been a perennial number one in Melbourne for a long period of time, talk station. But in Brisbane, you've got 4BH up there, which does really well, right?
4BH is number 3. So it's an AM, and at the moment it has a music format. For a little while it had a talk format, but you're going back a few decades. But yeah, it's a music AM station that is currently number 4 in breakfast. It's beating KISS in breakfast. This is Survey 8 2025. And overall as a station, it is 0.1 off being the number 3 station in Brisbane, and it's music on AM.
Yeah, and it doesn't usually get the sexy headlines. I mean, I always think about, the headlines about which station's number 1, and they always talk about Kyle and Jackie O being number 1 in Sydney. But 2GB in Sydney does well, 5AA Adelaide does well, and that those stations have a really strong connection to community and a strong connection to localism, whether it be talk or music. And I sometimes think that we kind of overlook those because it's not as sexy to talk about AM. But from an advertising perspective, from a listener perspective, these AM formats, whether they're talk or music, generate a lot longer time spent listening, right?
That's true. I mean, part of that's because they tend to attract an older audience, and older audiences can listen longer as well. People are still listening to radio, and I don't need to tell your audience that, but our mutual friend James Cridlin likes to remind people that radio listening isn't declining in terms of the cume, the number of people who are listening. It's just that people are not listening for as long because of the competition from audio books and streaming music, et cetera, et cetera. So all radio stations could learn from what you just mentioned, and that is building time spent listening. And if we could do that, then that's going to be a very good thing for every radio station in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And time spent listening is such a, again, an underrated stat. We focus on the cume number, that sort of overall reach, which is fine. But if you're an advertiser, you kind of want to build your frequency through, as in frequency of message, through longer time spent listening, obviously. And I think sometimes time spent listening in the AM sort of world is thought of as like, oh, the reason they have that share is because they've got this older audience. And look, I'm not saying that's not the case, but what's underestimated and undervalued, therefore, and where I think this investment from the Laundy family makes a hell of a lot of sense, is that AM has stood the test of time. I mean, we love to kind of joke about that cliche, video killed the radio star, but nothing has killed AM.
And you do that for James as well. You just said that.
Yeah, look, I'm name checking a few James Cridlin things today. Hi, James. But also, like, if you think about what's happening in the US, there is now a bill before Congress, or recently passed, called the AM Protection Act, because in a lot of regional and remote communities, AM, the delivery of AM, the technology, is actually more reliable in some parts. So, I think this is like the first step in me trying to help turn around a bit of a perception issue that AM has, because I'm a big believer in not only what the ABC does, but commercial AM operators in Australia and around the world. But you're also focused on local radio, which is the other thing I want to talk to you about. So tell us about the project that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, can I just briefly on the Laundy purchase of 9 Radio?
Yeah,
there was a great piece in Mumbrella yesterday, which
yes.
I read at the end of a long day of reading for my PhD, and I think I need to go back and read it again. But basically, it explains in great detail why it's a good financial decision, how the Laundys will make their money back in 3 years because they're leveraging off their real estate capital, but also how there's this similarity between what radio does, bringing community together, and what the pub industry does in bringing people back together. There's a great book called The Good Great Place, or The Great Good Place, and it's all about how we have our home and we have our workplace, and we need a third place. And I think radio can be that third place, as pubs can be that third place. But in a lot of our suburbs, there isn't a third place anymore. There isn't a pub or a bowls club or a library. There isn't somewhere we go to be with other people that are not family and they're not co-workers. And so, yeah, I'd suggest have a look at that article, the Mumbrella article, if you haven't. But yes, my interest in local radio and researching it comes from the fact that in the industry we go on about live and local, live and local. Radio is at its best when it's live and local. However, since the Hit Network has started networking its regional breakfast shows, we've seen that in just over a third of regions that are surveyed, the number one rating breakfast show in those regions is not a local program. It is the networked, unnetworked program. So in Mount Isa, 49.8% of the breakfast audience is the CFM breakfast show from Broadbeach.
Right. Wow.
49.8%. And you might say, okay, what about the oldies in Mount Isa? No, 40 plus and under 40. In both cases, they're listening to the hit breakfast show from Broadbeach. In Townsville, it's the same. Toowoomba, Roma, Emerald, all of these, this is just in Queensland. And we see a similar thing in other states as well. So I want to know why. Why is it that so many people in those towns are not choosing a local breakfast show, but are choosing a show that relies on the commercial breaks to sound local? So I was listening to the Mount Isa version of the CFM breakfast show this morning. About half an hour ago, they were doing a talker on when were you convinced your phone was listening to you and then served you ads. So great topic, nothing to do with Mount Isa, nothing to do with the Gold Coast either. And then the ad break comes on, and in a minute you hear the words Mount Isa 6 times. So there's no connection around Mount Isa being created, but almost half of that city is listening to that breakfast show, and that's what I want to understand.
Well, that's a fascinating topic. So just give your website a plug for us.
Well, localradiostudy.com is where I'm going to be soliciting for assistance this year, especially, and also then delivering the results. It's very early days. I'm just starting out, but this is going to be a big year of me traveling around the country, conducting online surveys, but also interviewing listeners and, importantly, non-listeners. Most of the research into radio is with listeners who then, of course, say how great radio is. I want to talk to people who don't listen to radio as well.
Fascinating. All right, so localradioproject.com.
Study.com, sorry, if I got that right.
Localradiostudy.com.
Yeah.
You've got it. Sorry, I messed that up. Localradiostudy.com. And what we might do is we might check in with you across the year when you've got some interesting little tidbits, even if they're just early formed thoughts, so we can kind of workshop them together and see where they go.
Absolutely. Before we say goodbye, someone sent me a T-shirt which is for James Cridland, because he's been talking up the ABC moving to FM in Perth, and this bloke Peter of Wavell Heights sent me this T-shirt in defense of AM radio for me to give to James. So
and what does it say? It says AM radio, 300 kilometre radius. Emergency info, non-digital, reliable, and free. Okay.
and on the front, you've got the inventor of AM radio as well.
Oh, excellent.
So,
very good.
So AM radio as a format, as a delivery mechanism, has its fans for sure.
It absolutely does. Spencer, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Wade.
Spencer Housen, Brisbane radio legend, and that is localradiostudy.com. So have a look at that, and I'm going to get Spencer back on when he's got some interesting stuff to talk about, and I get the sense that James Cridland's going to come on soon. I wonder if he will, to be honest, because, he can kind of put a nice email out, but I'd love to hear a bit more of him live. Okay, so I really think AM's got still a long future. I know it's not sexy to talk about, and I know talk feels like it's for oldies, but I can tell you from having worked in a talk station, it's probably the most thrilling radio job I've had, because you are responding to things in real time. And I think that real-time nature where things are happening in the moment, yes, of course, FM does it, and yes, of course, other formats do it, but I don't think there's anything quite like just that sense of something's happening, find out local news, traffic, weather, conversations that are happening, and maybe now, thanks to the Laundy family, conversations that are happening in a pub, also live on the radio. And that article that Spencer referenced is an excellent article. It was in Mumbrella yesterday by a guy called Henry Ennis, who's really laid out the argument as to why they spent $56 million on these stations, and they see it as a really good long-term investment. Okay, some liner notes to finish us off today. A couple of things. Tim Burrows, who we mentioned before, or Mumbrella we mentioned with Tim Burrows, he's kind of half slagged me off on the Game Changers podcast. He's talked about the Australian Audio Awards, which I've been talking about as well, and talking about how fantastic they are, which I've been talking about as well. But for some reason, he's gone on that podcast and said that, he used to come on the podcast with a guy that used to hang around and doesn't hang around there anymore, which is me, of course. So, Tim, pull your head in, Tim. If you'd like to come on this podcast and talk about what you've got to promote, please do. You're welcome anytime. A couple of quick things. Last week, I went to the Kyle and Jackie OB, and I got a question on the socials about, did they get any media coverage out of it? Yes, they did. Have a look at this.
7 News. Kyle and Jackie O have splashed the cash as they fight to win over Melbourne listeners. The radio duo dropped hundreds of tennis balls packed with more than $100,000 in cash and prizes from the sky during a broadcast at Frankston this morning. One lucky listener walked away $20,000 richer.
Gonna have to process that one. That's, yeah, huge.
The stunt almost didn't get off the ground. A planned helicopter drop scrapped at the last minute and replaced by a cherry picker.
Okay, so they got a little local news coverage. I know it's not a lot. It's a 30-second piece, but hey, it's a free ad for your radio station. So sometimes OBs can sometimes lead to local media coverage, which increases your reach. So never underestimate the power of that. Okay, so I used to work with Ty Frost. Ty, who is on Smooth FM now in Sydney and Melbourne, does a great job with the morning shift, is number one in Sydney in mornings at the moment. But this little bit he put on socials this week really, really surprised me. Have a listen to this.
And in 2026, I want to show you everything this city has to offer. I want to introduce you to...
Ty Tries It is the name of the segment. Ty,
And today I'm going to try to go behind the scenes at this place, the Sydney Opera House.
Images of Ty laughing, walking in, looking around.
I'm in the Sydney Opera House. I'm backstage. I found a door. Let's find out who's in here. Hello? Oh,
Come in.
oh, I'm sure she's lovely.
I'm just a nice old lady.
Okay, now if you were just listening to that audio, not seeing the footage, oh, it just made me laugh. Knocking on a door. Who am I? Just a nice old lady. And as Ty's former content director, I can tell you, I'm very surprised that Ty hasn't already tried everything. Let's just say that. Hey, that's the quarter hour for this week. If you want to be a P1, jump on thequarterhour.com. Quick couple of shout outs. G'day to Abby Hopkins, Michael O'Connor, Ego, Donnie Watkin, and Andrea Waycott in Victoria. Thanks for joining us on the quarter hour. Back on Thursday with Steve Reynolds, international talent coach, and we're doing a live Q&A session. But for now, that's been the quarter hour. Thanks for joining us, team. I'm just going to add Spencer back on. Thanks, Spencer.
No worries. No worries.
Sorry,
at all.
it's super quick, right? You see it.
Oh,
super
that's
quick,
all right. No. I mean, I've heard all but one episode, so I get it, and I know you went longer with the Triple J one, but that's all right. That was an interesting one. No, I like the discipline of this. It's good. I mean, we could, I could talk for an hour, about
same.
what we did there, but I'm happy to come back, and that's
Yeah. I'd rather sort of have you on frequently when something pops up. So if you do get something interesting in your research, even if it's just like let me just kind of tell you where I'm up to, just let me know.
Yeah. Well, I'll start. Hopefully, let's say in about 6 weeks' time, I should have the first survey data starting to come in from the first place that I'll be going.
Okay,
and
great.
it might be that I can say, this is just this little thing that I'm noticing. It might just be one little thing, but
yeah,
but I don't know. That's the beauty of doing research.
That's good. Yeah, you got to go where the research takes you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Quick shout out to Radio Notes podcast who says, thanks Spencer and Wade. It's perfect to see Ricky Martin pop head into shot. Ricky Martin. Have you got a Ricky Martin poster?
Oh no,
Ricky
that's no. So this is This is a Triple M bus shelter.
Okay.
Yes, Richard Marsland. That is
Richard Marsland. Sorry, the Ricky threw me.
Ed and Tony. Yeah.
Ah, there they are. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And
Tony
Radio
knows.
Notes.
I've said to Tony he can have this anytime he wants it. It was given to me. It is an original bus shelter poster. It's massive. It takes up the whole wall. So it's on sort of permanent promise to him. And he said, look, you keep it, otherwise it will be in just rolled up in cardboard and put in the cupboard. So at least you're using it as your backdrop.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Sorry, yes, I made a mistake. He's telling me tut, Wade. Sorry about that. Curious to see what Joel Creasy will do in the National Lunch Show on Nova. I've actually put in an interview request for Joel Creasy.
And what does that mean for Meltracina is the other question.
Well, I think we'll be on till 12 now.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah, because it was Nova Boy. They had this sort of Nova Boy Jams thing, which was basically pre-recorded hour of music. But if Joel's going live, I assume he's going to be in Perth. It's just a guess. And then he's going to do a bit of breakfast. And then 9 a.m. in Perth is midday on the East Coast. So my guess is he'll just roll through. But yeah, I've put in an interview request for Joel. Nova's a little slow getting back to interview requests because I've requested quite a few of their talent and we're still waiting to hear on all of them. But hopefully we get some of them on soon. All right, I better go and edit. Thanks, Spencer.
All right.
Appreciate you doing
it. It's all worked, has it, from this end? It says it's uploaded.
It's all worked. Yeah, it's all uploaded. We're all good to go. Thanks for joining us on the live stream too.
All right. See ya. Bye.
See you, everyone.